Okay. Thank you very much for remembering that because I forgot. So let's introduce our presenters. If you've been watching Matt Connect webinars, you've seen Eric Beauchamp from HumanWare, Director, Product Development. Joining us also today, Anne McKay-Bacon, teaching and technology consultant. You'll hear more about what she does a little later on as well. She'll talk to you more about those things. Some challenges that you might face. You might be overwhelmed by the process of teaching the Matt Connect to students. That's trying to get somebody up to speed on a new device can be difficult. Always not enough time in a school day to get up to date with all the new features and changes and things as they come through. How do you get that started? Teachers might be unaware of some of the resources that are available out there to teach students and get them up to speed on some of the different tools that are available. How do you track a student's mastery of the Matt Connect? So a number of things that we want to try to cover today and challenges that we're going to be trying to help you overcome. Let's talk about our objectives today. So we're going to review 2 resources created to support the use of the Matt Connect. We're going to differentiate instructional methods of sharing information about the device to students and to teachers. Identify at least 3 key functions of the Matt Connect to share with a student. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Anne first to get us started.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, the Matt Connect, teachers and students. And the question is, where do I begin first? Well, with teachers, I usually start with right out the box. So we open the box remotely. I'm talking them through opening the box, and we go over every piece of equipment or material that's in that box. And when I started with the Matt Connect, it was totally different than what the new one is. So with the new one in the packaging, you're going to get a battery for the camera. You're going to get a travel case for the tablet. You're going to get a stylus, so you no longer have to use your finger or the on-screen keyboard. And you're going to get a keyboard, so you have an alternative between the on-screen keyboard for those who have difficulty using that. And you're going to have a screwdriver and a screw, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And so once the teacher is taking out the equipment, we go over what each item is, we set it up. One of the things I like to remind teachers quite often is the camera is in charge, so make sure you charge that, and then we will address that a little bit later. Turning on the Matt Connect, we go right away to settings and look at how much the battery is charged and if the battery needs charging. And we talk about where the charging piece is and some of the ways you might charge, whether you do it the night before or the day before, or when you might have to charge it up during that time. Now with students, however, depending on the age level of the student and the skill level of the student, that tablet is already set up. So we don't go from the box to setting it up. If they're a young child, if they under 3rd grade, if they're a physically impaired student, or if they have a cognitive impairment, that tablet is already set up. I may have the camera attached to it or not. Charging, I make that the responsibility of the gen ed teacher or the special ed teacher or the paraprofessional, including taking care of that camera. But usually that tablet is already on the stand and it is ready to go. So from that, I start with the teacher and with the student looking at those user interfaces. So with the teacher, I generally combine the basic and the standard. The big difference between the basic and the standard is generally the OCR component and the gallery camera and the gallery menu. And then we do advanced, and with advanced, I section off. So we take a section or a particular program of the Matt Connect, and I go through that. Now, with students, depending on their skill level, their cognitive level, and their primary need, I generally look at basic for those who are very beginning. All we're looking at is magnification. I don't want to fool around with a lot of the buttons if they're young or if they are very busy with their hands. I just usually start off with basic. Standard will be the next one where I start adding in the OCR, where you start scanning in handouts or documents for them. And then generally between standard and advanced, I'm between fifth grade. Some of my third and fourth graders are pretty good, but generally by fifth grade, they have to be in advanced, and definitely in middle school and high school. All right, so user face with teachers, I start off with basic and standard, then I go into the advanced. With students, depending on the skill level, the cognitive level, and the primary need at that time, when I start off with students, they're either at basic, standard, or advanced. Now, I go over all the banner buttons and any gestures that apply for that particular user interface. Every now and then with a student, third to fourth grade, they may be in between standard and some components of the advanced. But it generally depends on their skill level, their cognitive level, and the primary need, what the classroom teacher is presenting to their peers and what they have to be responsible for. You know, one of the key things with our students is you want to get to them early to learning the devices and what they need before they really have to use it. Now, with the camera, with teachers, it's generally, you got to charge it. With my students, here again, depending on their cognitive and skill level, I let the adult in the room handle attaching it, charging it, taking care of that camera. Now, that screwdriver and the screw, why is that important? Well, for those students, doesn't matter what age they are, who like to detach or play with putting the tablet on and pushing that button down to make it loose, or you have any concern at all, well, this is a nice piece that's been added. There's a screw and a screwdriver where you can lock that tablet in and not worry about it being shifted or taken out or moved when it shouldn't be. Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead, Betsy Ann, and let's put up our first poll question then for today. We want to know which is not one of the three user interfaces for Matt Connect. So which is not one of them? So you only pick one. Which is not one? Basic, average, standard, or advanced? Basic, average, standard, or advanced, which is not one of the interfaces for the Matt Connect. This would be a good time to ask some questions if you have them now as well as we go through this and we answer that poll question.
Yes, Paul, thank you. So we had a question come in, Anne, asking, so there are different settings on the Matt Connect. Would you describe the interfaces as different settings?
I guess you can call that different settings, but the correct name, and we always want to use proper terminology, is that they're user interfaces. So basic, you just have four, I think, banner buttons you have for magnification, so you can enlarge or increase or decrease that. And then you have your color contrast, which I'll talk about with the next slide. With the standard, you have the components added for the OCR, which is your optical character recognition, where you can scan in your handouts or your documents, and the gallery, which is where that information is saved. And then advanced takes over all the elements and all the components of the Mac Connect, which includes the Android, because it is an Android tablet attached to a stand.
Thanks so much, Anne, for clarifying that. That's really important to know that we're calling them user interfaces to distinguish between the three different views a student or a teacher might have of the Mac Connect. All right, we've had about 76% who have voted in our poll. Paul, is it okay if we turn that off and I'll share the results?
Sure.
All right. So what is not one of the 3 user interfaces for Mac Connect? 87% said Average, and that was the correct answer. Average is not one of the 3 user interfaces for Mac Connect. Again, those user interfaces are basic, standard, and advanced. Back to you, Paul.
All right, thank you. So back to you, Anne, for some more information on the Mac Connect.
All right, so then the next step after we get it all set up, we go over all the layout of it, is customization. That's one of the things I like to do, not only with my teachers, but my students. So with the teachers, this is where we go to the settings menu, and we go over all the options in the settings menu, and there are quite a few. So we spend a great deal of time of talking about what options you would have for what particular student, trying them out, and going through each of those features. Now with the students, especially if they're just basic and standard, I just really look at the contrast menu. So that's your color. The color of your text and your buttons, the background color versus the text color. I go over the magnification level with them, but the real key customizing is looking at the contrast. And what I try to do with my students is look at these 3, maybe 4 choices that they can have that they will go through. Just see which one is better. And then maybe we'll take another set of 3 or 4, dwindling it down to maybe their favorite 2 or 3 that they can use, depending on the handout that they get or the text that they get or the color background that they get that they're going to be looking at. With teachers, we just go over it all and talk about what students, some of those features will best be used to benefit their students or not. So customizing is key. You may not be able to get exactly the first time around, the second time around, but you're going to work on what is good for them to use when they're starting to use it, to read material, listen to the material. And some of the features for my students, I preset. So if I have a preschooler or first grader and, they don't know what color they are, I will set 2 colors and go, okay, pick one and we'll try that. And then maybe a couple lessons later on, I might try just adding one other color and taking one away. Okay, pick one. So students, it might be preset depending on their age and skill level and cognitive level. Teachers, we just go over all the settings so that they can kind of get a feel of what they might set up for their students. And so we also go over the banner buttons, and we still go over any gestures that are included for that particular user interface that we're going to be using. So contrast, color, the modes, the reading modes, the gestures, all of that I go over with teachers. Whatever is applicable for the user interface that the student is using, I go over that to help make it easier for them. So when I'm not there and they're in their classroom, I also go over it with the classroom teacher or the paraprofessional or the special ed person who's going to be helping the student, so they understand what the options are and what the student might need, because that might vary depending on the material that they have in front of them. Okay. All right, I think I'm ready to go on to the next one. All right, here's the big fun one, the advanced user interface. All right, so now you have the main carousel, which has your calculator and your book and your magnifier and your settings and all those particular features on it. So you get that full menu, and you get the full menu of all the banner buttons with the advanced, and you get all the gestures that are included for using the tablet. So for my teachers, I go over all the components of the magnifier and what you can do and the banner buttons. Generally, I do that with the teachers. And the gallery options. Okay, so now standard, you only get a few, but with the advanced, you get the options of changing the document folders, creating folders, putting your files in the folders. You get being able to, I used to call it annotate. But now I think they're calling it handwriting tools. So you get to write on your handouts. You get to answer questions if there are tests that are included. You can then not only rename it, but then you can submit at this point your documents that you have answered or written on or looked at to your teacher. So there's a lot more capabilities when you get to the advanced level. We set up the Wi-Fi so that they're connected to their school, or if they're at home, to their home, and connecting to the Wi-Fi. We also, at this point, connect the keyboard. So we pair up the keyboard. And a couple of these things we're gonna ask Eric to show us when he comes up. The help button, oh man, for the teachers, we look at that help button, we look at the tutorials that are there. Generally, I use that part with middle school and high school students. If there's a fifth grader that's into looking at YouTube and finding out information, I probably will present it to them, those two areas to look at. The fourth graders and on down, I generally don't go into help buttons or any of the tutorials. The books, that's the next thing that we set up under the advance. We look at being able to connect to Bookshare or BART and downloading books. With my teachers, I have them practice that, and with my students, I generally make sure that there's a book that's in their classroom, especially if they're young. I already have it preset. But from fourth, fifth graders on up, we look at that book share and the BART, and they're being able to set up and download books. Definitely by middle school. When that student leaves elementary, they need to have a lot of these skills, at least working on, introduce, if not already under their belt from middle school and high school. The calculator, we look at the calculator. Generally with my early elementary students, we're just looking at a basic calculator. With the older students, we look at the other components of it. Notes is something new with this new Mac Connect. So they actually can then use the on-screen keyboard, use the paired Logitech keyboard, and that stylus. I don't think I mentioned that stylus that was in the box when you take it out. But now there's a stylus that you can use to write or draw with. And so the notes menu, we work on that. We generally have a lot of fun. Now, if you're asking me how much time do I spend, it depends on the teacher's need, what the teacher's interested in, that they need to have for the student they're getting ready to work on. For my students, I generally try to spend anywhere from a good 30, 45 minutes to an hour. If not, there were some middle school and high school students I spent an hour and a half, so that I felt a little bit comfortable with their awareness level, their identification and recognition level, what they needed to do, where they needed to go, and what gestures they need to use. But I didn't go on until they at least had that down, at least a good 75%. Okay, then Paul, you want to go on to the next slide? So you really want to spend as much time as needed in letting the student be as comfortable as they can with using those objects, the components or options of the Mac Connect. With the teachers, they generally tell me, well, I've got a student I want to do this with. Well, how do I do that? If they don't have that, then I go by this particular kind of system. Next, I look at the Aph Toolkit. Now, this is where we add in the Android section. You can either get to it by using the 4-finger touch on the tablet. That's my favorite. That's the easiest way and quickest way. Or you can go to the Aph Toolkit. And in this toolkit, there's a variety of apps that are available. Generally, we look at the Word and Excel one. We might look at the PowerPoint one with the teachers. With my students, generally Word is the one that they look at for the most part. At this point, after we do the Wi-Fi setup, we generally set up their Gmail accounts because they're going to need that Gmail account or email account to start submitting their work to their students. So that's very important that you have an email. Generally, students have email accounts with their schools so that they can begin to submit their work. Now with the Android, that's where it opens up vast store because you got the Play Store of apps that you can download, but there are some apps that come already installed on the Mac Connect. So one of the things I like to do with my students is do the Kahoot. I love to do a Kahoot. I do the YouTube with them. Even with my younger students, we'll look at Pete the Cat. But those of you who know who Pete the Cat is, who are in the literature, we might look at a Pete the Cat YouTube. We look at, for my teachers, I try to get them to use a team viewer so they can see what their students doing, especially in this COVID virus environment, and you're not with your students, so you can see what they're doing. Team viewer is definitely something that I would utilize. Going over the specific settings at this time with my students, we go over the settings, especially my middle school and high school students. We go over all the components that are in there. With my teachers, I definitely look at any updates, them being able to restore back to factory if something happens. We kind of go over troubleshooting issues. Troubleshooting, I do a lot with my middle school and high school students, not so much with the early elementary students. Generally at this point, I'm working with the classroom teacher, or I'm working with the special ed staff that's working with them, or the instructional person that's in the classroom. So I spend a lot of times on books, the reading modes of the books, spend a lot of time on using the keyboard, whether it's the on-screen keyboard or the external keyboard with notes. I spend a lot of time with the handwriting tools for the students, a lot of time with the gallery and the options that you use in the gallery. Spend some time on placing that paper correctly when you're using the OCR to scan in your document and setting it up. And I'm going to ask Eric when his time is up to show us some tips on that math page that comes up and that you want to scan in and get that correct so you can view it. Let's see. So it just depends on the student level, student skills, student cognitive level, and it also depends on what the student has to do in the classroom. The preschoolers through third grade, generally the classroom teacher can give me some of their handouts and I use those with the students. With preschoolers, kindergartners, we're looking at doing a lot of coloring underneath it, or picture identification with it, identifying numbers. And as each grade level comes, depending on what they have to do in the classroom, then I adjust my instruction for what they need in the classroom. Middle schoolers and high school, we do everything, especially if I feel very comfortable that they're a little techie with charging the camera, using the camera, placing the camera, and going to the Play Store, downloading free things for them. So that's generally my system: basic, standard, and advanced, and then hitting each component of the advanced options to showcase to the teachers and to the students. And then I try to have a good time. That's important for both of us. Okay, I see there's a poll question coming up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great information. And so Betsy Ann, let's throw our next poll question up if we could. Question about the APH Toolbox. So we want to know, what will the APH Toolbox allow you to do? Choose one. Will it let you access APH's Access Academy webinars directly on the Matt Connect? Will it let you get to third-party apps on your Matt Connect, or help you fix a flat tire? APH's Toolbox, is it going to help you access our webinars directly on the Matt Connect, get to third-party apps on the Matt Connect, or fix a flat tire? As the chat is open, we can take questions if any more are coming up. We'll give that a moment to happen.
Yes, and for those of you who are just waiting with anxious bated breath, we are going to be demonstrating the Matt Connect in just a minute. Eric Beauchamp from HumanWare is going to be showing us some of the features of the Matt Connect, so we'll get a really good view of the product. While we're in this poll, we had a few questions come in about different apps that we can use on the Matt Connect. Anne, do you know if Class Kick and Team Viewer are available?
Team Viewer is definitely available. I don't know about Class Kick, but you can definitely search through the Play Store to see what's there. But Team Viewer is there, and I use it.
Excellent, excellent. There are requests to review the handwriting tool and to look a little bit closer at Team Viewer. So I'm just going to mention that in case we have a moment. But we've got about 60% of people responding to poll question. APH Toolbox will allow you to. So if it's all right, I will go ahead and shut down this poll and share some of our responses. So thank you again for taking these polls. This is just a really great way for us to know if everybody's paying attention and following along with our fantastic webinar today. So APH Toolbox will allow you to access APH Access Academy webinars directly on your Matt Connect. That was 42% of our respondents. 51% said get to the third-party apps on your Matt Connect, and 8% said fix a flat tire. So Anne, I'm going to let you answer this question and then turn it over to Eric for anything we'd like to demonstrate. And what's the correct answer?
Getting to those apps on the Android, that is a quick way to do it if you don't use the finger gestures.
All right. And Eric, did you have any questions for Anne?
It's pretty nice to hear a teacher actually speaking instead of me and showing how this can be taught to teachers or the student. Great presentation, and thank you. And I do have a couple of questions. More specifically, I know that you talked a lot about all the interfaces on the Matt Connect that is offered, but when would you use the different interface, and how would you introduce it to your students?
Okay, so let's start off with the basic interface. With the basic interface, since I'm only looking at magnifying, they're being able to increase the magnification level or decrease it, and using color contrast, I would generally introduce that with a very beginning student, a student in primary, up to maybe grade 2, 3, depending on their skill level. Definitely all of my cognitively impaired students who are just getting started with it, I will use the basic with them. Standard adds that component for using the OCR and using the gallery to save those documents that you are scanning in. So I started out really with a second grader with that. I had one first grader that was ready, but generally it depends on the skill level of the student. Then I would do the standard, and the advanced is for a student who has enough skill level, knows the basic, and is ready to go. So that's generally third grade and up for sure. Definitely by fifth grade, they're got to be in there. And no doubt about it, middle school and high schoolers, advanced.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And then the advanced, like you were saying, it's all the Android apps that are accessible to the student. How would you introduce those kinds of new apps to the student?
Well, either we will first get to the Android, so that's either going to be through the Aph Toolkit or through the gestures. And then from there, we would research. I do some research, so we would use Chrome to do some research. We would go to the Kahoot. I would play a game with them. We will look at the BART app and then some of the other apps that I may have on there. Like nowadays, we're looking at Flipgrid. For those of you might have to Google Flipgrid if you don't know it, or Wakelet or Padlet, some of those video discussion boards or video conferencing kinds of activities that the gen ed teachers using, I would introduce that to them and so that they can use it in their classroom. YouTube, all the kids like YouTube, so we will look at YouTube through there. And every now and then we might do music. So I know there's a Spotify app, so we might do some music. But depending on their interest level, what they need to do, and if this is going to be a fun introduction, That's how I would introduce the apps.
That's awesome. I'm seeing a lot of questions on the chat, and let's jump into. Can I, Jim? I'm just going to do a little demo on how to switch between these interfaces, if you don't mind, just so that people know where those interfaces are. So I'm going to switch camera here to show you my Matt Connect, and let's go through them because there was several questions here that were in the chat. So everybody can see my Matt Connect. I got pucks holding my webcam. I'm a true Canadian. So usually when you get your Matt Connect, when you get it out the box, you're in advanced mode already. So the thing to do is if you have a small child, and you want to use, like Anne was saying, you want to use the basic interface, you go into settings, which is on the right of the big menu. And then the first option in the settings is user interface. Select user interface. And again, the first option on the top, you have interfaces and there's a colon and advanced. So if you tap on that, you have three options in the next menu. And these options are advanced, standard, and basic. These are the different interfaces that are offered in the Matt Connect that we just saw with Anne. So if I want to select basic, I just go down and tap on basic, which is the third interface in my list. Very quick gestures, a very quick cool gesture to go back to your main menu is two finger, double tap on the screen, and you go back directly to the main menu. Right now, I'm in my basic interface. My main menu for my basic interface is my live camera. I'm in live mode. So right now, if I put my hand underneath here, I only have access to my live mode. And one of the questions in the poll is, are all the settings on the button banner? Well, yes, there are. There's only 4 buttons that you can use in the basic interface. The first button on the left-hand side corner is the contrast button. So if I tap on that, you'll go through a certain default color schemes that have been added. So you got black on white, white on black, and I'm going to show you how to change those or add new colors to that button. So you just tap, and it's going to loop through the saved color contrast. The second button is to access your distance camera. Now your distance camera, like Anne was saying, you're better off charging the distance camera. So I have one right here. There's a little door on the side. You just place your USB in there and you can charge it. And when you're ready to use it, there's a power button on the top. Just press on it and the camera is going to turn on. And you could put that on the right or left hand side of the stand. And once that's on, just press the distance button, and that's the second button from the left on the button banner, and it's going to connect automatically to your distance camera. So I have here an example of a blackboard, which I put some math equations on there. You can, and then again in the button banner, you have 4 buttons. The first button is the back button, second is the contrast button, and then the zoom in and the zoom out buttons. To go back, just press the back button, and you're back to my magnifier, which is the main application of the basic interface. And then you have the 2 other buttons on the right, the plus and the minus, which is the zoom in, zoom out. So very basic interface. That's all what you have access to. In the basic interface, like Anne was mentioning, a cool feature that we've added to the stand on the Matt Connect is the possibility of adding a screw on the clip that holds the tablet. Because if I just drop it here, and if I pull the clip, what's going to happen is that my tablet's going to fall. And what we've noticed is that with young students, they love playing with that clip. And we've heard from feedback from teachers that they're scared of breaking the tablet. So there's a possibility now just to screw in a nice little screw at the end here. And we do offer, it comes with the new Matt Connects now. It's in the box. There's a screwdriver and a screw. Once that student is older and won't be able to play or understands not to play with the clip, you can take it out. So that's a cool feature, and Anne did mention it. And now let's go again, let's evaluate or let's evolve with the student. A bit older, you want to add the OCR functions. So what you do to change the interface, and I get a lot of questions about this. How do I go and change back to my advanced or basic interface? How do I do that when I'm stuck on my basic interface? What you do, it's always the same thing. Press and hold on the contrast button, which is the first button on the left. And a menu will appear after a couple of seconds. And right here, there's a couple of things that you can adjust. And if you want to add some contrast, like I was saying previously, you go into the contrast menu, and then you can add more contrast on here. You can change the contrast color of my menus or the buttons, or I can add some more colors into my magnifier application. So you have more colors to loop through when I tap on my contrast button. But to change my interface, select the second option in the menu, settings, again, user interface, which is the first option. And again, the first option on the top, interface, then we can switch to standard. And this is very well hidden because I don't want the student to play around with this and then end up in the advanced interface and be lost. So that's why it's really down deep in the menus so that the student don't play around with it. Once you're in the standard, again, my cool gesture, double tap on the screen, two fingers double tap. You're brought to my main menu, which is again my magnifier. This is my go-to application in my advanced, no, a standard interface. Now in the button banner, there's several other buttons that were added. The one on the left is my gallery button. So if I tap on that, it's going to bring me to my simple gallery. You have buttons on the right or on the left to use in order to scroll through what I have. You can still use your finger to scroll, but it just makes it a bit easier for students to go through the gallery. The next button beside the gallery button is the contrast button. So I've added some more colors. So let's see if it kept those colors, and it did. So I can loop through all my colors that I've added. Third button from the left is my distance button, my distance viewing button. Again, same thing, press on it, turn on the camera, press on it, it's going to connect automatically. And then the fourth button is my capture button. And this is when I have a math sheet here. And OCR, usually what this is going to do is going to take a capture of my document and it's going to do automatically the OCR on it. And when the OCR, what OCR means is optical character recognition. It's going to detect all the characters. Sometimes the OCR is not very great or very good when doing math. So what's happening here? Let's go back. Let's do this again. It's not very good at detecting math. So what you want to do is that you want to press your contrast button until you get to color. And it's going to remove the fonts that were added when detecting the characters. Now, for some reason, it's taking a bit more longer than I thought, but let's go to my gallery. I'm just going to show you. I already have that picture taken. When the OCR is done, you have text that is on top of my real picture, and that's not pretty good for me to use that. So what you want to do is tap on the contrast button and go to color, and it's going to take out those characters on top of the image. And I'll show you a cool gesture when we get to the advanced interface, which you don't have to tap on a button to do so. So then now you see your math. You can change also the contrast, other contrast color button. And I saw in the chat somebody asking, what about the triple tap? I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did a triple tap just by accident, and it magnifies the screen. This is an accessibility feature in Android, which is always activated. I strongly recommend having that because then you can navigate very easily in the Android system afterwards. But basically, to go out of that function, you just triple tap again, and you can deactivate that function in the accessibility menu in the Android system. One last interface, press and hold the contrast button, a couple of seconds. No, sorry, you have to be in the magnifier. So I'm going to go back to my main menu, which is my magnifier, press and hold the contrast button a few seconds, and then we'll be able to select in settings, user interface, my advanced menu. And we're back to where we started with the main carousel. Now I've showed you how to do some math, showed you how to change the interfaces, and a lot of people had a couple of questions on the keyboard. One of them was, can you use different keyboards? Yes, you can. Any Bluetooth keyboard will work, but you won't be able to access some features that were specifically programmed for this keyboard, which comes with the Mac Connect now, which we do sell at HumanWare as an accessory if you want to have one. But basically, how you would connect the keyboard is through your settings in Prodigy. You don't have to go into Android, just go into settings in Prodigy again. And then the third option in my settings is system. This is where I can do my Wi-Fi setup or my Bluetooth setup. So I go into Bluetooth setup, turn on my keyboard here, and I will choose here if the Bluetooth is not on, it's going to say Bluetooth off. Just tap on it, it's going to turn it on for you. And then the third option is devices. So you tap on devices and it will scan for devices that are available to you. Now, if I already connected to your keyboard, you will see already the Bluetooth Logitech keyboard. So what you do is you press on it, and I'm going to forget mine for now because I want to do a full procedure for you so that you're able to do it by yourself. Now I have all my devices that it found around me. If I want to redo a scan, just press scan for devices on the top of the screen. And underneath the Bluetooth keyboard, there's a little button on the side of the on off switch. Just press on it and it will detect it. So if you tap on it, connect. If everything goes well, it's going to ask you to enter a pin. Again, use the keyboard to enter the pin, 9633446, and enter. And you're ready to use your new keyboard. I think I went a bit over. I think we have a poll, or
Yes, we do have one more poll question. And I believe that Anne had some things that she wanted to see, but I think you've showed all of those.
Eric,
sorry.
before we get to the next poll question, can you show the audience the help function that's built into the mat, and then can you also show the skills checklist?
Absolutely. And again, from the poll that we did at the beginning, I think those are the two environments that you guys learn on. But basically, in the advanced menu or the advanced interface, at the end, completely at the end of the menu, besides settings, there is a big help icon. And if you tap on that, there's two options, either YouTube tutorials or feedback. Now, feedback, it's only going to be a text box. You can enter your feedback. It's going to go directly to a database, which the product manager at HumanWare will see. And this is how we can feed our roadmap to continue improving the Prodigy software. But the YouTube tutorials, if you click on that, you have two options here, the Mat Connect or webinars. So Mat Connect are small, I'm going to say small capsules of different functions that you can do with the Mat Connect. And this basically launches the YouTube application on your tablet, and you can view these cool tutorials that I must say the guy that did those capsules is awesome. I'm gonna let you guess who it is. And if you want to go back to Prodigy, just the little circle at the bottom of the screen will bring you back to Prodigy. And then the webinars are some webinars that we have on the HumanWare YouTube channel. And then the checklist. Checklist is very useful. Here I want to show you how to get the checklist. I'm going to share my screen. My screen number 2. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we got you, Eric.
Good. So right now I'm on the APH website. You can do shop and get the Mat Connect. That's a good sign. We're out of stock. That means you guys are loving this product. There's some more coming. And then you scroll down at the bottom here, you got different things or different menus, specification, features included, and support. And in downloads, there is a Mat Connect skill checklist. And I have already that download it and open for you here. But basically, the checklist is a Word document, and it goes through all the options that I've been talking about here. So it starts off with device setup and orientation, and there's a couple of columns. So the skills that the student must learn, the actions or the gestures that has to be learned to do that kind of skill. If there's an image, kind of like the button image, you can have in that column. Mastery level, then you can grade your student on how well he does that skill set, and then the date that he accomplished or she accomplished that skill. And you can go through the list. The list is made so that it goes very logical way of teaching the Math Connect. Again, as you can see, all these tables, you got the basic interface, what all the buttons do, and if they master those buttons, standard interface, and then it goes through after that, the magnifier, the calculator, the books application. So there's a couple of pages. This is a very useful tool, and I think Anne could voucher for that, that it's a good way to monitor the progress of your students.
Definitely, Eric. I agree.
And then if you go down a bit, and under manual, you have the manual, the Math Connect, but you also have hot keys for the HumanWare Bluetooth mini keyboard. If you download that, again, it's another Word document, but basically it's a table with all the special keys that we've programmed. So what the F1, the F2 keys, even there's a control Q that you can do at the same time to exit to Android. And then the control B is to toggle the button banner. And there's all kinds of cool features that we've added with that keyboard. So you can download those commands if you'd like from the APH website. I think that goes through the checklist and the Bluetooth keyboard commands.
Okay, perfect. So we'll throw in our last poll question, Betsy Ann. We talked about this a few times, so let's see if you followed along. What is the function of the included screwdriver that comes with the Math Connect now? Is it to take apart the Math Connect, to screw the camera in place, to screw the tablet in place, or to remove the camera from the Math Connect? What's the role of the screwdriver? To take apart the Math Connect, screw the camera in place, screw the tablet in place, or remove the camera from the Math Connect? And we can check and see if we have any more questions that have come in to answer as well.
Well, we have, Paul, so many questions coming in and a request for the webinar to be longer because we have so many questions. I want to make sure everybody knows we're going to be doing a Math Connect webinar about once a month. So keep following the Access Academy webinars for more opportunities to learn more about the Math Connect. We've reviewed many of the questions today. Another question that just came in is if you can connect a Braille display to the Math Connect.
You can. It all depends on the Braille display. I know that I tried out the BI40, the HumanWare BI40 Braille display. Not all the commands are supported, but we're working on improving that. But you can connect a Braille display to the Math Connect.
Great, thank you so much for that. We've had about 67% complete our poll, so I'm going to go ahead and end polling. Thanks for taking that, just to see if everybody's paying attention and following along. 88% said the function of the included screwdriver is to screw the tablet in place. You are absolutely correct. That feature was added thanks to some feedback from teachers like you that students were playing with the clip that kept the tablet in place. And so as an extra security measure, there is a screw and included screwdriver on the Math Connect. If you purchase it now, it comes with the screw and screwdriver. So thanks for taking that poll.
And just a note about all the questions that come in, we've had on other topics. Some of the webinars that we have set up in the future have been based specifically on feedback that we've gotten and questions. So please keep those coming. It might very well be that we do a webinar based on something that you ask.
I need to mention something. In one of the last webinars, I showed the math, how to do math with a calculator. And in that webinar, I was showing a screen capture to capture the graph of the graphing calculator and to include that into the gallery. And you know, the idea of feeding the roadmap to improve on the features, in the next version of Prodigy, you'll have a nice button of a capture, screen capture on the button banner of the graphing calculator, and that's going to automatically put that in your gallery, and then you can move that into a folder of your assignment or your homework or your work. And this is a kind of feedback that I get from these webinars or from you guys. This is how we can continue improving on the software. So you guys, you know, I'm free, and we can take some more questions. And if you guys want to see if the if the participants want to stay in the chat and ask questions, I can go through and demo a couple of things that we didn't go through, or after the webinar.
We did see one question, and that was about the handwriting tool.
Mhm.
So if you get an opportunity, maybe showcasing that, because students will have to respond to handouts, whether they're quizzes or tests, or just a basic handout and submit it to their teacher.
And if you want to get in touch with Anne and continue the conversation, up on the screen is Anne's contact information, including her preferred email, which is tcvired@gmail.com. Again, that's tcvired@gmail.com. And I'll drop that in the chat as well. And finally, for those of you who are really excited about the Mac Connect, you can purchase it from APH. It is on quota at the price of $2,995. A really great deal when you consider that this is a 3-in-1 tool, a magnifier, a distance viewer, and a tablet all in one. Really great tool for a student K through 12.
And it's portable.
That it is.
All right. So we can go through the handwriting tool or the annotation tool, like Anne did mention. So, all right, I'm gonna change my camera. So what's awesome about the handwriting tool? There's two things that we can do with the handwriting tool. Is one, you can take a picture, and for example, if I have, let's go do the whole loop of this, but let's say I have my assignment. Not let's say, I do have my assignment under my camera. I would take a capture of my document, and it's going to save it, or it's going to do the OCR as I mentioned previously. And for some reason today my Matt Connect is a bit slow. Oh wow. See, it happens to the best. No worries. There was a question in the chat. How do you turn off the lights? There's a little icon on the magnifier application. The third button from the left, you just tap on that and the lights will be turned off. You can tap again and the lights will light up again. And if ever the lights are not on and they're always off and you can't turn them back on, the little trick for that, just undock the tablet. Sometimes the USB driver is stuck somewhere and didn't initialize correctly, and then you just redock the tablet and you should be fine. So I'm just gonna go into my gallery where I had my exercise here. And if I open that my picture, a cool gesture to remove that not so good OCR because of my math exercise is a swipe down on the right hand side of the screen, and it's going to go and toggle between positive, negative, and color. What you want is color, and then I'm going to zoom in here. And the third button from the left is a little pencil. So if I tap on that, I can start writing on the sheet right away. So I can do my math right on the screen. So 6 plus 4 is 10. And I'm using here a stylus that comes with the Mat Connect in the box, so you don't have to buy one. But students can also use their finger on the screen if they don't want to use the stylus. But the stylus is nice because it's kind of like a pencil. So you're learning at the same time how to write. And then I can answer my homework. Once I do my back, it's going to be saved automatically. So all this, I call it a paperless CCTV because you don't even need the paper anymore. You can have this you can have the paper as in a PDF format, download it onto your tablet on the Prodigy system, have the student answer it with the stylus on the annotation tool, and then share it back to you. And it becomes a paperless CCTV. And in this era of time, with COVID and everybody being at home, that's an amazing feature to be using right now. You can use the annotation tool also, like I just said, like that, or you can use the notes application, which I find this is a great application. And basically you're adding notes in this folder. So there's two buttons on the top of the screen, one on the left, one on the right. And on the right, it's a plus button. So you press on the plus button and you can create a new note, you can create a new category. And a category is like a folder inside an Explorer, your Windows Explorer. It's like a folder that you're gonna have all your notes, specific notes on it. And then you can delete the notes contents. But what I wanna do here, I'm gonna create a new note. And a new note will be a blank page. It's a white canvas. And I can start writing right away on the screen. Whoops, not really. I have to press my pencil here. I can start writing right away on the screen. I can use my stylus. I can tap on the second button from the left, which is the little pencil, and it's going to toggle to a highlighter. So I can highlight some text if I'd like to, and it's good. You can change the color of that highlighter. You can tap again on that pencil, and you can use my Bluetooth keyboard. What you're going to do here, when that's a big T, press and hold anywhere on the screen, and another interface will show up. Now my Bluetooth has disconnected, but the virtual keyboard will pop up if you don't have a Bluetooth keyboard. And you can start writing using the keyboard as much text as you want. Once you're ready to send it to your canvas, you just press that button, which is a little paper airplane on the top right corner, and you'll have the text right on here where you did your press and hold. If I don't like it there and I want to move it, tap on the text. It's going to highlight it in red, and then you can just move that text anywhere you want. I can even do a pinch and zoom that text bigger and place it anywhere on my screen. Then just tap anywhere on the screen. It's going to unhighlight it. You're going to lose that caption. So you're going to have that there. I love this application. I was in a I love hockey, and I was in a coaching training school, and in a couple weeks ago, and I used this application to take all my notes, and I just love doing that. I had my little Bluetooth keyboard connected to it, and it's very easy to use. You can also in the annotation or the notes application, you can also erase what you've done. Now, I have selected the T here on my second button, and if I select the eraser button, this will only erase what I've written with the keyboard. So if I try to erase what I've written with my stylus, it won't do anything, but it's not gonna, if when I'm gonna pass over what I've written with the keyboard, it's gonna erase it. If I want to erase the highlighter, which you do, that I'm gonna re-tap on my eraser, and then I'm gonna tap on my T here, and I'm gonna go and select, I'm gonna tap twice to select the highlighter, and then I'm just gonna select the eraser again and go over the screen, and it's not, should erase, and it's gonna erase my pencil here. And then the other buttons that are accessible for you, you can select any color to write. So right now it's default black, but I can select a red, a green, a blue, and there's all kinds of colors here that I can change the markings that I'm gonna have on my notes. So let's change it in red. I'm gonna press my my pencil. So everything's going to be in red. Even when I'm writing with my keyboard, all the letters will be in red. The last option on the button banner is the thickness of or the width of the trace that you're going to have when writing. Right now it's set to thin, but you have medium, wide, very wide, and that's going to change the thickness of your pen. So it's going to be a bit wider. So that's how you use the annotation tool, the taking notes, doing annotation on a captured image. And what we're looking at right now is adding it to our books application. And so stay tuned, that's going to be an interesting feature. But imagine downloading a book or sharing a book through Bookshare in the students list, and that student can write or highlight on that book and save it in his working directory. You can have also, I've done a couple of webinars where I had exercises like kind of like this, and I use the annotation tool just to trace my trace here, learning how to write on the screen. I even had painting with colors where I had different colors on the image, and you can choose that and make that cool art on your screen. Is there any questions, anything that people would like to see? I had a question. I remember one question about the Teams viewer connecting to a smart board. I don't know if that person is still on the webinar, but the team viewer, yes, is accessible through Android. You can connect that team viewer client to the server, which is going to be your smart board, and have the smart board directly on the Mac Connect. I did some, if you go through all the YouTubes on the APH side or on the HumanWare side, I did do a couple of webinars on doing that, and most probably it's going to come back eventually because a lot of people are asking for those kinds of features. But there's TeamViewer that you can be using. You can have VNC, it's another application. You can have Splashtop, I think, is another application that you can use. So there's several other applications that you can use to connect to whiteboards. In the handout section on the APH website, it's
Yes, so those are the only handouts for that
okay.
that
Yeah.
questioner. Those are the only ones available today, were the checklist and the hotkeys.
So since we're talking about the Teams viewer, and there was one question here, which one do you download? It's going to be the client team viewer. So you just type in team viewer, and it's going to be that one. It's going to be the team viewer for remote control. So you would install that directly on here, and you would have the full. Now I'm not set up to show a demo of this because I need to set up a server side and have that IP or the computer name that I'm going to connect to.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for sticking around and answering all these questions.
I just love it. I just love all these questions. Plus, we're I'm happy that there's a lot of beginners starting to use the Matt Connect.